Amazing. Well, among the first WikiLeaks revelations were the desires of Middle Eastern leaders to crack down on Iran's disputed nuclear program. Today in Geneva, international negotiators tried to do just that. For the first time in more than a year, Iranian representatives sat down with 6 major powers, including the US. Just before the talks began, though, Tehran shocked the world by announcing it had taken an important new step in making fissile material. The BBC's Tehran correspondent James Reynolds reports now from Switzerland.
In comes the woman who has one task in Geneva: to get Iran to explain its nuclear program. Baroness Catherine Ashton nods hello to Iran's chief negotiator, Saeed Jalili. For religious reasons, the two do not shake hands, and they stand a respectful distance apart. They head in for talks, and they're joined by the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. It's a full turnout, but no one expects a breakthrough. This helps to explain why. On Sunday, Iran celebrated the arrival of its first consignment of yellow cake from one of its own mines. Yellow cake is used to make enriched uranium. In other words, Iran wants to show that its nuclear program continues.
This means that Iran has become self-sufficient in the entire fuel cycle, starting from the exploration and then mining, and then turning it into yellow cake, and then into converting it into UF6, and then enriching it and turning it into fuel plates or fuel pellets.
Iran insists that it has the right to enrich uranium for civilian purposes. For the country's president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, it has become a personal project. But the West fears that Iran may be taking the first steps towards building a nuclear weapon. One official at the talks has given a blunt assessment of the first day's negotiation. "We made no progress on the substance," the official said. Negotiators now have just one morning left in which to make some kind of advance, because after that, everyone simply goes home. James Reynolds, BBC News, Geneva.
No progress. Well, for more on today's talks and the international demands being made on Iran, I spoke earlier with the BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bone, who's also in Geneva. Jeremy, they've had a first round of talks. They've agreed to carry on talking tomorrow. If you had to bet your large fortune on these talks actually producing something, which way would you go?
I'd keep my money in my pocket, I think. I've been talking to officials involved in the talks, and they're saying that essentially nothing of substance has been discussed thus far. They have one more session in the morning, but up to now, they haven't got onto substance. What's happened is the two sides have basically rehearsed their positions, repeated the things they've said before, gone back onto what's already been put on the table, and as we all know, that means that there's a big gulf between the two sides, and in fact they've also spoken about the extent to which they don't trust each other.
And how much does the Iranians coming into these talks, announcing that they are now producing their own yellow cake and don't need to import it anymore, change the dynamic there in Geneva?
Well, I think that the fact that the announcement came just before the talks were convening was certainly significant, trying to send a message from the Iranian side that they are able to do what they want without taking stuff in from outside. But other interpretations say that actually they are suffering because of sanctions. They're feeling the weight of sanctions, and certainly one big power interpretation here, one Western interpretation, is that in fact that they were prepared to talk because of sanctions, because they were feeling the pressure from sanctions. But certainly, as far as I can tell from their deliberations today, that pressure has not manifested itself in any new positions from the Iranian side.
So is it looking there like the Iranians have a strong hand at the moment?
Well, that's what they've been saying, certainly in some of their public statements that have been coming out of Tehran. I guess it depends where in these things, where you stand depends on where you sit. I think on both sides, I think they've got a pretty good case. On the P5+1 side, they've got those 4 UN Security Council resolutions, and they are saying that what this meeting is all about are signs from Iran that they are prepared to start accepting those, to start implementing them. And on the other side, Iran is saying, and has said repeatedly, it has the right to a civilian nuclear power program.
Jeremy Bone in Geneva. Thanks very much, Jeremy.